Hi, Tom. Good morning. We're just going to wait for a few more people to join before we kick off properly. I am hoping that for everyone is as sunny as it is here in Kent this morning. I don't know about you guys, but I am loving this better weather, especially with the bank holiday coming. That never happens. And in case you've noticed, Harry is here joining us on my lap. He's hopefully going to behave. He very much enjoys Kiran's webinars, so he does sleep through them, but that's not anything you should take offence of, Kiran. Cool. Let's wait for a few more people to join. So nice to see everyone. Oh yes, nice to see everyone waving. This is great. Morning, G. I can see you there. How are you?
Not too bad. Yourself?
Very good. Must be 24 hours or so till holiday now.
Yes, less than that. Although, you know, having children, they always like to throw spanner in the works. And my little one decided to have chickenpox.
Oh no.
So literally 24 hours before flying to Portugal. So we may not be going there.
Oh, gee, no. Oh,
yeah, it's okay.
Well, that's not fair. Well, no. I hope that you can sort something out, maybe fly a day or two later.
We'll try something like that.
We'll cover them, put them in a hat and scarf so you can't see any spots.
This is coming from someone that's done this before, it sounds like. You were too quick there, Kiran. Oh, amazing. Oh, well, I'm hoping that sorts itself out, G. That's not nice when I mean, it's going to be sunny here this weekend, but it's not going to be Portugal sunny.
Yes.
Amazing. Right, I think there's enough of us here now that I'm going to start introing, but we will just keep letting people in as they join. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It's so lovely to see you all here. I hope your brunch boxes have arrived, and feel free to tuck in. If you've already eaten it, that's also cool. If you're saving it for the weekend, that's also great. But just a massive thank you to Chantel for arranging, because a lot of time and love goes into those boxes. So enjoy. I'm Becky. I'm the founder and CEO here at Reflect Digital, and we're a digital marketing agency that are here to unleash your potential. So that could be your personal potential, your business potential. We specialize in leveraging human behavior insights. And the idea is that we use these to optimize customer experience and to level up your digital marketing. So that could be your SEO, your paid media. But by understanding your audience better, you can get better results. And that's what we're going to learn about today. Today can be as interactive as you'd like it to be, so feel free to use the emojis on Zoom, etc., to get involved. We'll do Q&A at the end. If you've got questions as you're going, though, and just don't want to forget them, pop them in, and then when we get to the end, I'll do the Q&A. So yeah, be ready for that. So we're talking about empathy in e-commerce. So empathy is becoming increasingly important in all online journeys, because it really is about building relationships and driving conversions. So we have Kiran with us today, who's an expert in behavioural science, and we're super lucky to have her in our team. And she's going to be sharing her knowledge of how to build real human connections with your audience through an online experience. And we must remember that humans, we're really complex, and our intentions often don't align with our actions. So we're complicated creatures. So let me tell you a tiny bit about Kiran. So she's behavioural strategist here at Reflect Digital. She has a PhD in psychology from the University of Kent. So that does mean she is Dr. Kiran Webster. So she has experience working in behavioural science in government, which is both at Public Health England and the Department of Education. And over the last few years, her entrepreneurial itch just kept on growing. So running her own business wasn't quite enough. She then found the opportunity to move into the agency world, where here she supports our clients across B2C and B2B to make more human connections through their marketing, which ultimately drives more ROI. So after that intro, and a few more people have joined us while that was going, which is great. So it's lovely to see you. I am going to hand over to Kiran to take us through, and I'll be back at the end to do Q&A.
Thank you so much, Becky. So hi everyone, I'm Kiran. First thing I'd like to say is I have got a little bit of a cold today, so apologies if my voice goes or I sound a bit nasal, or I might need to just turn myself off of mute and camera for a second to have a coughing fit, but we'll roll with it. We'll see what happens. So yes, let's get started. So the first thing I want to say is when I'm talking about empathy today, I'm going to be talking about it from the perspective of behavioural science, because obviously I am a behavioural scientist working within the digital marketing field. So when I'm talking about empathy, I'm going to be talking about it from that perspective. If you're not familiar with behavioural science, obviously the first question you probably want me to answer is, what on earth is behavioural science? So basically, it's a scientific understanding of human behaviour. And as behavioural scientists, we attempt to understand the drivers and the barriers of behaviour. So that's what's going on, what's making someone carry out the action that they're carrying out, or what's stopping them from carrying out a particular behaviour or action. And it's this deep understanding of your users, understanding what it is that's going on for them, understanding what it is that's driving their behaviour or preventing their behaviour. That is what I mean when I'm talking about empathy. And too often, this deep understanding of your audiences is unfortunately siloed amongst the different teams that you have. So, for example, you might have SEO experts. They have a really good understanding of what it is that people are searching for and what the intent is behind their search. But often that information just stays with that team. Or you might have the creative team. They really understand what's working in terms of their creatives, what's getting engagement and impressions, but sometimes it just stays there. And the same with CX and UX and all the other departments you can think of throughout digital marketing. And the problem with this is if it just stays there, say your SEO is good, you'll get the clicks on your website, but you might not get the conversion. Say your CX or your user experience is good on your website, that's great, but how are you being found if your SEO is no good? So our solution to this siloed empathy that we often come across is a pillared approach of applying behavioural science. So we have decided that we have 3 pillars, and these are strategy, assets, and channels. And behavioural science should run through all of these pillars and all of these different elements of each pillar. And when you do that, you find that everything's connected. So for example, applying behavioural science in your strategy, really understanding your users and having empathy into your strategy, if you've got really great personas and user journeys, that is going to flow into your paid ads, your SEO, your CRO, your email campaigns, and obviously your content and your visuals, making it all nice and linked up. So I would argue that empathetic marketing, using empathy in your marketing, is actually the biggest tool that you have in your marketing toolbox. And empathetic marketing can be your superpower. It can be the thing that elevates your marketing game and elevates your brand as well. And it will help you to stand out from the crowd. So now I've started to talk about the term empathetic marketing. So what exactly do I mean when I'm talking about that? Well, let's start from a point of view from traditional marketing. Traditional marketing is all about the business, all about the brand, all about the product. And you go out there into the world and try to tell people about the wonderful product or service that you're selling, all the good things about it. And you try to persuade and convince people why they need it in their lives. It's all about the brand. Well, empathetic marketing is the absolute opposite of that. So you start from the customer perspective, you start from the consumer perspective, you're putting yourself in their shoes. And when you do that, you're understanding what it is that the consumer needs, what it is that they want, what it is that they don't want, and what it is that's driving their behavior. And then you meet them there and you can then talk to them about how your product, your service can help them with their needs. So if that's not convincing enough, you might still be thinking, but why should I choose empathetic marketing over traditional marketing? Well, here's a little bit more of the science behind it. So we make an estimated 35,000 conscious choices a day, and that's just conscious. So even the decision to breathe is a decision. The decision to blink is a decision, but it's an unconscious decision that we just make. So imagine the effort that it takes if we had to, all of the decisions we made throughout the day, if they were all conscious. So for example, when I get up in the morning, I do things in a certain order, but I don't even think about it. Like I couldn't tell you what order that is, but the decision to pull back the covers and get my left leg out of the bed first or my right leg out of the bed first. Imagine if I had to actually stop and think about all of that and think, what would be the best thing for me to do here? Which side of the duvet do I pull back? Do I pull it down? Do I pull it to the side? Which leg should I get out? we would be exhausted. We wouldn't make it through the day at all. And this is really important to know, because as a result of the fact that we have to make a lot of unconscious decisions, we rely on mental shortcuts or heuristics. So I don't think about how to get out of the bed, I just do it, but I still have made that decision. And what this means is that often the decisions that we make can appear on the outside to be illogical or irrational. I'm sure if I observed people getting out of bed, there would be someone who would get out of bed what looked to me a bit strangely or irrational. I don't know. There's probably various ways to get out of bed, but it's actually not that irrational. And it's because somebody's relying on their mental shortcut, these cues in the environment that just make them unconsciously think and make that decision and carry out that action. Oh, sorry, I skipped a slide there. And what behavioural scientists do is we work with these irrationalities or these kind of illogical thought processes rather than against them. So to give you another really plain example is, imagine if I put you in a room with a big red button in the middle of the table, and I said, do not press that red button. You know you shouldn't press that red button. I might tell you that something really bad will happen if you press that red button, but you will have that overwhelming urge to press that button just to see what's going to happen. Now, that is an example of the irrationality, but where behavioural scientists will work with that urge and not against it, rather than just telling people and expecting them to do it, I might do something else. I might build things around it. I might put obstacles in your way so it makes it even harder for you to get to it. Or if I really don't want you to press that button, I might change the colour of the button as well, because I know that if it's a less appealing colour to your subconscious, you're less likely to press it. Now, I want to touch really briefly on nudges, because if you have heard of behavioural science, you know anything about behavioural science, behavioural insights, you've probably heard of the term nudge. You might have even read the book Nudge. So I kind of want to just bring our attention to it briefly, but then it's not the focus of this webinar today. So nudge is one of those ways of working with those human biases, so with those irrationalities that I spoke about. And a quick definition of a nudge is a small tweak to the environment that can have actually a really big and positive impact on the behaviour. And the important point here is that a nudge never limits the choice. So again, going back to that pressing that button example, I'm not putting a box around it and a padlock so you can't press the button. I'm just putting things in your way so it's making it harder to press that button. But the choice is still there if you want to press the button. So let's look at a few examples of nudge just to bring it a little bit more to life. This is a really classic one. Obviously, it's an offline example, but if you've read Nudge or any of those kind of books, Thinking Fast and Slow, you've probably come across this example. So this was a public health initiative to try and get people to use the escalator less coming out of the subway and try to use the stairs more. And people just weren't using it, because why would you? The escalator's quicker, you just get on it, it's automatic, you don't really think about it. But they found that when they painted the staircase to look like a piano, and it wasn't a functional piano at all, it just looked fun, more people started to use the staircase. And it doesn't really make any sense. You don't get anything out of it, but it works. And similarly, if you have quite a wide staircase like this, you can actually double the amount of people that are using the staircase at one time if you just put a handrail down the middle of it. So it's understanding human kind of instincts and automatic subconscious reactions and working with that. Another example is ice cream. So we know that ice cream is not that healthy for us. I don't know what the percentage of ice cream, of fat in ice cream usually is, but let's say for argument's sake, it's 50%. And say I've come up with an ice cream that's reduced in that fat percentage, and it's actually only got 20% fat in it. So if I was to label it as 20% fat and try to get people who are, say, on a diet to buy it, that actually seems like quite a lot of fat still in the ice cream, even though it's reduced compared to other ice creams. So just framing the facts differently, and if I framed it as 80% fat-free, I'd actually get more people buying my ice cream. This is a messenger effect one, so you might be familiar with Dogs Trust and other types of charities that often send letters and appeals from the animal themselves, and sometimes they have a paw print on there, and that's another type of nudge that can be really effective. So knowing your audiences, obviously this wouldn't work if you were trying to speak to someone who wasn't a fan of animals or dogs or pets. So knowing your audiences and knowing which messenger is actually really going to capture their attention and kind of pull on their heartstrings, if that's what your aim is really important as well. So I picked out 2 example nudges from some e-commerce websites that I think are on the call today. So Mattress Online, this is a great example of a deadline. Deadlines, when human beings are given a deadline, we're more motivated to do something about it. And, you know, this is one that we're probably all really familiar with. We've seen it across lots of different sites. Another one from Red Letter Days, who I believe are on the call today as well, the use of social norms. So we are social beings. We want to be doing what everyone else is doing too, because when we see someone else doing it, or we know that a lot of people are doing that thing, it reaffirms that that's the right choice to us. And we sometimes don't even think about it. We just go with the norm. So by telling people that these are the breaks, these are the gifts that are trending now, is actually really powerful. And I think that this could be made even more powerful, perhaps with, you know, trending lines, or even ordering them in the number in like which is more popular at the moment as well. But like I said, I don't want to dwell too much about nudges, because it's not all about the nudge. They're really powerful, but they'll only get you so far. And sometimes, in fact, a lot of the time, nudges are kind of used like plasters. They're just used at the end of something when something's not quite working right, and you just want to boost the engagement a little bit more. You just want to boost your conversion rate a tiny bit more, and you stick some nudges in there and just hope it all works out. That's how a lot of the time they're used, not how they should be used. But I would like us to be thinking a bit more strategically, so that actually when you use a nudge, you use it appropriately and you've planned to use it, rather than planning to use it to fix something. So I believe that a strategy without empathy in it isn't actually a strategy at all. And the reason for that is, if you haven't involved empathy in your strategy, you haven't made the time to get to know your audiences, you haven't understood what it is that they want, they need, you haven't understood their pain points, their problems. Remember when I spoke about empathetic marketing and what it is, it's about meeting the consumer at where they are. So you need to have that empathy with your audience in order to understand their problems and then meet them there and help them to solve their problems. You might be thinking that you currently know your audiences quite well. Maybe you use your data to segment and understand your audiences. You've got a great CRM. That's fantastic. Keep doing that, but you can't rely on that data alone. And there's 2 main reasons for that. So when you just follow the data alone, it's really limiting to your audiences. It's limiting to the knowledge that you could have about your audiences. Because when you look at your data and you can plot out the customer journey, you can find out who buys what, where they buy it, when they buy it, and even how they buy it. But what you don't know is why they buy it. And you also don't know why people don't buy it. So you might be able to plot out the journey and see where people don't quite make it through to the transaction. But again, you have absolutely no idea why they're not doing that. You don't have that understanding with your audience. And then the second reason that I would say that you can't use data, can't just rely on data alone, is that it comes from humans. And like I just said, humans do weird things all the time, and we appear irrational and illogical. And if you haven't taken the time to understand the audience, sometimes their decisions can come across a bit unpredictable as well. So when we look at data, we look at it because it's all numbers. We look at it as objective fact, but sometimes we forget that it's actually humans that are making up those numbers. So a little bit more into the behavioural science here to explain some of that. The way in which we think and we make decisions can be conceptualized as 2 different types of thinking, system 1 and system 2. And system 1 thinking is a little bit like the character Homer Simpson. So our system 1 is our kind of unconscious, our fast, our automatic style of thinking. We don't really do much thinking, or Homer doesn't anyway. And he kind of just acts on gut instinct. So, you know, if he fancies a donut, he'll have a donut. If he fancies a beer at, you know, first thing in the morning, he'll have a beer. If he doesn't want to go to work, he won't go to work. It's really emotional, and it's our gut instinct. Whereas system 2 is a little bit like Spock from Star Trek. And if people aren't familiar with Spock, just think of him as some sort of AI being. And when he thinks about a decision, he doesn't just carry it out on a whim like Homer does or system 1. Instead, he will make a cost versus benefits analysis. He'll really weigh up the pros and cons, and he'll think about it thoroughly before making a decision. And you might be wondering, which one of these are you more like? Well, we have both system 1 and system 2 at play all the time, and actually they're kind of fighting each other quite a lot. But I'm afraid to say Homer is in the driving seat by default. So we are naturally a little bit more like Homer Simpson. There's a lot of things, a lot of decisions we make throughout the day, throughout our lives, that are actually just emotional decisions and gut instinct. So we're not actually the rational beings that we think we are. And this is important to think about when we're thinking about marketing, because which system 1, system 2, or which person, Homer or Spock, that we want to speak to in our marketing really depends on the context that we find ourselves in. So let's take the example of holiday making. So who is more likely to book a holiday, Spock or Homer? You might actually think both, because if it was Spock, you would want to be talking about all of the practical, logistical things, things like how long is the travel from the airport to the hotel, what is the cost, what's the objective value I'm going to get out of how much I'm spending. And that's important, budget's important. But if we were wanting to speak to Homer about booking a holiday, we want to be talking about all of those more emotional and exciting things. So we want to be telling Homer about the many swimming pools that the hotel has. We want him to imagine lying on the beach with a bottle of Duff beer in his hand, all of those sorts of things. And to pick on another attendee of today's webinar, lastminute.com. So thinking about this, whether you speak to Homer or Spock when you're selling a holiday, this is just a little screenshot from your holidays landing page. And I think you've done a really good job of understanding your audiences. I think it's fair to say that when people are on lastminute.com, they're clearly looking for a very quick last minute holiday, but they're also looking for something cheap and quite cheerful. And that is what you have. You have budget holidays on your holidays landing page, but you've also used social norms here. So you've spoken about, here are the most popular holiday destinations, which is really great. However, we have really, irrational assumptions about different countries. Sometimes we know nothing about a country, but just have an assumption and might think, oh, I never want to visit Gran Canaria, and I don't know why, I just don't want to do it. So I wonder if you could flip that and talk more to Homer and talk about these are the most popular holiday destinations for sandy white beaches, or for hiking, or for skiing, or for hot air balloon rides, and not name it by country. And then I might actually find I'm more tempted to go to Gran Canaria when I find out that they've got a brilliant hiking trail. So that's just one example. And obviously, if you were going to make those changes, I would always recommend testing them as well. So keeping one landing page how it is, creating another one and having 50% of your audience go to one, 50% of the audience go to the other, and find out which works best for your audience. So thinking about emotion, I want to share with you a story, it's a real life case study about a man called Elliot. So he was a really successful, intelligent businessman, and he unfortunately developed a tumor in his brain. And the tumor was centered on the part of the brain called the amygdala, and that's the part where it's the emotion center. So it's responsible for emotions. And he needed to have this tumor removed. And the neurosurgeons knew that when they would remove it, it would very likely affect his emotions. It would affect his amygdala, and he could well be void of emotions altogether. Now, that is exactly what happened. After the operation, Elliot was otherwise fine in himself, but he had zero emotions whatsoever. What they weren't expecting, and what did happen, was that he also really, really struggled to make a decision. So the doctors noticed this. So Dr. Damasio, who was one of the neuroscientists looking after him, tested this out a little bit and asked him to fill out some medical forms, and gave him a selection of different colours of pen to choose. And Elliot took minutes deciding on a pen. Now, if you think if I presented you with some pens, you would probably take, I don't know, an average 1 second, half a second to decide between the pens. He took minutes. And then Dr. Damasio asked him when would he like to make his next appointment, and he took over half an hour to make that decision. And then Dr. Damasio said, I'd really like to take you out for lunch, but you decide on the location. And Elliot spent hours trying to decide where to go for lunch. Now, this case study is fantastic to demonstrate exactly how emotions are linked to our decision making. So it really shows us with concrete evidence that we cannot make decisions, or we will really struggle to make decisions without our emotions being involved. And Dr. Damasio actually concluded that we're not thinking machines that feel, we're actually feeling machines that think. So we will always feel first, and thinking is second nature for us. This is really important for marketing because it shows that we actually need to go beyond just the rational, logic-based marketing. We need to go beyond talking about what are the selling points of our product or our service, and actually be thinking about and talking to people's emotions as well. I want to talk for a moment about trust and how that's linked to this empathy and emotions. So a huge poll that was carried out a couple of years ago across multiple markets, I think it was over 20,000 participants, if I remember correctly, found that 81% of people said that they must be able to trust a brand to do what is right in order to even consider making a purchase with them. And 67% of people said that they might actually try something because of its reputation, but then they will soon stop buying it if they can't trust the company behind the product. So how does this link? How does trust link to empathy? Well, you can only build trust if you are actually genuine and authentic in your communications. And you can only be genuine and authentic if you have empathy and you really take that time to understand your audiences. I want to share a quick anecdote with you. So apparently, President Roosevelt once said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the anecdote I want to share with you is a personal one of when I went to buy a car, and I had all of my requirements. Thinking about Spock again, I had all of my, this is my budget, this is what I want, I don't know, the performance of the car to be, or whether it was petrol or diesel, etc. But one thing that I really needed was I needed space for 2 children's car seats, and I needed space to be able to put a pram in the back, plus any other shopping bags, etc. And we went to one car garage, and when we walked in, the salesman was very nice, greeted us very nicely, wanted to know what we were looking for, obviously. And as soon as we mentioned about the car seats and the pram, etc., you could see that he just wanted to sell us the bigger cars. You could see that he thought, this is where I can get my commission, and actually just showed us all of the cars that were out of our budget. And we could tell he just didn't really care. And there probably was a car within that forecourt that would have served us, but we just decided because of him, we were going to leave and look elsewhere. We went elsewhere, same thing, but this time the salesperson said to us, I understand what a pain that must be. Have you got your car seats with you? I tell you what, go and get them and bring them in, and we will try them out in every single car in the forecourt if that is what you need. And the only difference here, I could have bought a car from either place. The only difference was the salesperson who showed me that he cared. He showed me that he cared about us and not just about his commission. Whether that was the truth or not, he came across as empathetic. He came across as genuine. He understood our pain points and he understood our needs. And obviously we bought a car from him. So again, this is really important when we come to thinking about digital marketing, because digital is everywhere. We can reach anyone, anytime, anywhere. And that's really great if we're solving people's problems and we're being helpful. But if we're not solving them, if we're not being empathetic and genuine, then we actually just we're quite pushy and we become quite annoying in our advertising. And it is our role, I believe, to make our audience's lives easier. It's not our role to just push our product or our service. It's really about understanding people and making their lives easier, solving their problems for them. And a quick exercise actually in empathetic marketing. So by now, hopefully, I've really made the point clear about why you should be using empathetic marketing, why it's so important. But you're probably thinking, okay, how do I do it? So this just little, I want you to take a few seconds to engage in this little thought exercise. So I want you to imagine that you are the marketing manager for a big chain of coffee shops, and you understand the importance of empathetic marketing. So you want to try it out. And to do that, you want to understand the customer perspective, what it's like for a customer when they enter your coffee shops and when they order their coffee, and what the whole experience is like. So you're going to imagine it. So just take a few seconds to imagine putting yourself in the customer's shoes, walking up to the coffee shop, opening the door, ordering some food, maybe ordering a drink, sitting down, that whole experience all the way through to leaving. Now, I can bet that the coffee shop you imagined was your favorite coffee shop, or perhaps your local coffee shop. I can bet you imagined ordering your favorite food in a coffee shop, your favorite drink in a coffee shop, and it was actually all about you. It was really egocentric, and you didn't actually put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And the reason for that is you can't. So when I ask you to imagine what it's like for someone else, you've been to a coffee shop before, you've had that experience. So your own consumer identity is activated in your mind, and it gets in the way of you being able to think from the shoes and put yourself in the shoes of other people. And loads of studies find that this is true. So when marketers try to be empathetic, they're actually really rubbish at it. And studies have found that the more empathetic marketers try to be, the worse they are at predicting what it is that their consumers want and need. And these studies actually show that it doesn't matter what your experience is in marketing, what your seniority is. We're just really bad at trying to understand what's going on for other people. So now at this point, you might be feeling a little bit confused because I've told you really need to be empathetic, and then I've told you that you can't be empathetic and we're really rubbish at it. So actually, that's just a really good example of how not to be empathetic. It's not good enough to just say, I wonder what our customers want, let's try to imagine it. Instead, there's lots of different tools and things that we can produce to try and understand the consumer perspective. And one of those is personas. I'm sure you're all familiar with personas, but quite often I come across personas that look something a little bit like this. Obviously, this is a very, very basic version, but just to illustrate the point, if we think about, I used the example of holiday making earlier and who we would speak to, whether it's Homer and Spot. This doesn't tell us anything about this person and what they would like for their holiday and what their concerns are about holiday and what their needs are about holiday. But this is often what we get, and this is what you'll get if you just use your data alone to try to understand your audiences. So to make really great personas, we need to be lifting the bonnet and really trying to understand what's going on underneath. What is it that's driving people's behavior? And we need to be thinking about people like icebergs. So icebergs actually only have 10% of their mass visible above the water, and 90% of an iceberg's mass is below the water. And humans are exactly the same. So what we say we do is just that 10%. What is visible, what is conscious is just that 10%. The rest of what's actually happening is below the water. And if we want to understand people and we want to make great personas, we need to be diving beneath the surface of the water and really figuring out what is going on. So do use your data, but build on it, and build on it to try to understand people's motivations and understand their problems. And like I've been saying, we don't do that just from imagining the perspective of the audience. We don't do that from just analyzing data, but we can do that using lots of different methods, such as social listening, interview the customer facing teams within your business. They are the ones that speak to your customers day in, day out. They are the ones that hear their problems, their needs, their concerns, etc. Interview customers themselves. Use a mixed method approach, so qualitative and quantitative. They both have their pros, and when you use them together, it's fantastic. Reviewing the wider context, so making sure that you're zooming out as well as zooming into your audiences, using focus groups, analysing click-to-chat data, and lots more. But you can see there's loads of different ways that you can try to understand your audience and really build that empathy and connection with them. So when you do that, you will go from personas that look a little bit like this to personas that look something more like this. Again, it's a very, very basic version, just for the sake of today's webinar. So if we're thinking about holiday making, we might actually find, if we've used all of those examples of tools and methods to understand this person here and what they want from a holiday, we might find that actually her concern isn't whether it's a 5-star hotel or has got 5-star reviews on TripAdvisor, but they're more concerned about friend and family recommendations. They're more concerned about their safety for lone travelers, especially female lone travelers. So using this information, I could then change my copy, change my marketing strategy to talk about those things, rather than just, you know, here's the price, here's all the facilities at the hotel, and here's what other people think. And I want to leave you with a real life case study from one of our clients, Sunsail and the Moorings, who sell kind of charter yacht holidays. And their landing pages for their holidays were originally set up for those that were more in the buying kind of purchase stage of the funnel. So it gave information basically to Spock, giving that information that you want to know. What's the spec of the yacht? What's the cost? You know, how many days? All of that stuff. But what was happening is the majority of people that are landing on that page are actually more in the consideration phase of the funnel. They want to be doing research about their holiday. They want to be finding out more. They want to be being inspired by it. They're going to keep coming back to that page, reading more. They're going to look at the pictures. And research has shown that when people are looking for a holiday, they tend to look for these things that are on the left of the screen. So relaxation and rest, beaches. They want to know about the dining experiences they can have. And when Sunsail and the Moorings changed their landing pages to talk more about that, to inspire people, to talk more to Homer Simpson or our System 1, and spoke about the sandy beaches of Croatia and the private chef that you can have on board your yacht, that actually found a massive increase in conversions. So 197% increase in phone inquiries, which obviously then led to conversions, and 133% increase in e-commerce bookings, which I just think is incredible. So things that I really want you to remember to take away from today are that our decisions are grounded in our emotions. We can't make decisions without our emotions. So when you want people to be making decisions to purchase whatever it is that you want them to purchase, you need to be thinking about emotions as well, because they will always be tied up in there. We as human beings, but also marketers, are always more egocentric than we realize. So really test yourselves and make sure that you are actually taking on board the audience perspective, and it's not something that is bringing in your own bias or your own consumer identity as well. And I want you to be thinking about all the metrics that you use. So in SEO or CX and conversion rates, I want you to remember that all of that data actually comes from real people, and that when you use empathy and empathetic marketing, this is when you can break through those numbers and actually see and speak to the humans behind those numbers as well. And one really final thought that I want to leave you with is that you must test all of these. So don't take my word for it that these changes are going to work. Don't take the researchers' word for it, because all of your audiences and all of your businesses are completely different. So you must test. And over time, that changes as well. Things change for your audience over time. So if you carry out some research into your audience and you've got some ideas of what you want to change, don't just completely wipe it. Have an original version and a second version and test it. And often people are scared of this because they're scared of failing. But if you're going to fail, fail fast, because you will test, you'll learn from it, and you'll adapt and repeat. And I'm going to leave this screen up for a few moments if you want to grab your phones and scan both QR codes. One is to find me on LinkedIn, the green one, and if you want to download these slides, you can scan the yellow QR code.
Thank you so much, Kiran. That was brilliant. I always learn something even when I've had it before. I loved it. Amazing. So it's question time. We've got time. We've got a good amount of time as well, which we can finish a bit earlier and give some time back as well. But who's got some questions? So if anyone, you're either welcome to come off mute, you can pop them in the chat. I guess while you're having a think, one of the things that just came to mind, because there was so much in there and there's so much good stuff. Like if a brand's sitting here today thinking, where do I start? Is it with personas? And obviously there's lots of different routes to getting to build up that data. Like, is there a one size fits all, or how do you go about advising someone on what they should be doing?
Yeah, I think so it all depends on what's available. Like a lot of the time, you don't need to kind of reinvent the wheel. You've probably got a lot of this information already. You might have customer facing teams that have done focus groups for whatever reason. So the first thing would be go back through what you've already got and really try to pull it apart and see what you've got as a starting point. And then, yeah, obviously, depending on timescale, resource, budget, you could go really crazy with this stuff. And, you know, you can conduct lots of different interviews and surveys and pull that together to create personas. Or if it's like a really, I guess, specific problem that you're trying to solve, maybe you don't need a persona. Maybe you do just need to do a little bit of digging. So sorry, Becky, it doesn't really answer your question because it's a bit of a how long is a piece of string, you know.
No, but it does, doesn't it? Because I guess it is like, if anyone left today thinking, oh, I don't have the answer because I don't know what to do, that's kind of okay, because it is like, I suppose we normally workshop it with clients, don't we? In that initial stage is trying to work out, what do they have, what do they not have, and it's always a bit tricky, but it's then starting to build on it. And also, like for me, I think the most important thing with personas is that they become a document that's alive in your business. It's not oh, someone's gone and done a persona exercise and now let's let dust gather on that.
Yeah,
you should then always be adding back into it, because your test and learning should be informing it at all times.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. I mean, I'll ask questions all day long, but has anyone else got any questions?
I do. Hi, my name's Ella. I really like that you said to sort of go to the customer sort of, sorry, my to go towards the customer sort of team to find out from them. What sort of things would be great to find out from the team themselves?
Yeah, so obviously it depends on what your business is, but let's take I've used the example of holidays quite a lot. So let's take the example of those that are answering the phone lines to people who want to book a holiday and taking those inquiries. So I would always set out like an interview schedule. It could be quite a flexible one. So have some key questions you want to ask the team, but also allow that to kind of go wherever it needs to go as well, so you can get the juicy stuff. But I would be looking to ask, like, what is it that they're looking for when they ring? So when customers ring through, what kind of questions do you think they commonly ask? And this is really a good way, because often these types of things aren't logged anywhere. But if this person is having this conversation day in, day out, and maybe you'll actually find that there's something missing. There's a piece of information, key information that's missing from your site that everyone is ringing up saying, what happens here? What do I do? You know, or is this facility available? And that can be really key, because it could be an easy fix. You could just be like, oh, everyone's trying to find out if there's a gym there. Let's tell everyone that there is a gym there. But so, yeah, I would ask questions like, what is it? What are the biggest questions that people ask you? What kind of concerns do people have? So what are they kind of worried about, or what do they maybe reasons that they don't book as well, and that can be quite subjective from the customer facing team as well. Obviously they're not going to know the exact answer, but they can, from the conversations that they have, they would be able to say, you know, I think that people are really concerned about this, or they say, oh, it's a bit too much out of my budget, the timings don't work, etc. You'll get some sort of information from that.
That's awesome. I think we've also had some clients over the years that have where they might have telephone recording and obviously GDPR and everything, making sure everything's compliant. But we've had clients where their calls get automatically transcribed, and then that actually gives you a big data opportunity, because talking to the customer service people is brilliant, but actually limited in time and how often, and then remembering themes, etc. So you do that, but you also, if there's a way that you can keep it alive with data coming through. So yeah, we've got clients where, like, on a weekly, monthly basis, they'll have data being scraped from those and pulling out what are the keywords that people are talking about, asking about, and that gives an amazing food for thought of then what's missing from the website journeys, what maybe we've not understood properly about our audience currently. So that's another great idea if that's something available to you.
Yeah, and actually it's a really good point, Becky. I would also say never just use one method. Don't just ask, don't just do a focus group and that's job done. Don't just interview the customer facing teams and that's job done. Always use multiple methods to back it up and really challenge yourself.
Definitely. And I guess one of the things I know we've struggled with sometimes with clients is that lovely marketing people like we have on the call today normally get really excited about this. And then sometimes they hit blockers because they go back internally and they're like, I want to spend some money on this project, or I want to invest some time in this project internally. And it's not always, people don't always see eye to eye on it because they're like, oh, that sounds like fluffy marketing, which it's really isn't. If you've got any ideas or thoughts around how you get past those blockers, and I guess the proof's in the pudding, but you don't always have the pudding at the start, do you?
Yeah. Send them my way. get them to watch this webinar, maybe. Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, if you can convince them to do just even like a small test on something, and just get your foot in the door first, and then you can kind of show exactly that proof is in the pudding, really.
And I guess that's where little things like the nudges, although they're not the answer to everything, sometimes if you go, right, let's do a tiny bit of dabble with some behavioural science, let's do a little thing, and you can get some great results from it. It might be the sticky plaster, but then if they see, wow, we made money, this makes sense, then suddenly you can get more buy-in and do the fancier, longer lasting changes.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, any other questions? And Ella, thank you so much for that. No one else? Oh, okay, amazing. So what we'll do before you all leave, so don't rush off just yet, I would love us to just gather some feedback, just because it's really important to us and it really helps us know that whether this has been useful, what we should schedule as our next event that you might be able to come to, etc. Oh, there's another question in. So Chantel has dropped the feedback in. So if you want to start filling that in, please do, because it's so helpful to us. But let's just go to the question from Kirsten. So does this work for internal comms as well as external comms, do you think?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's something I'm doing here as well. I'm like, I want to work on everything and everyone and everywhere. Yeah, if it involves a human doing a thing, then yes, you can absolutely apply behavioural science and empathy, and yeah, absolutely does work for internal comms, because internally you still need to get things done, you still need people to respond, you still need to understand your colleagues and employees to make a team work well. So absolutely.
Definitely. We did Brighton SEO last year. We did a talk around brand versus SEO, how to influence people and win allies. And it was such a, like, using some of the behavioural techniques, thinking about how you do get people to be bought into something and on the same journey, and see that it's also as important as what they're doing, and the two kind of meet together. So yeah, it really does. We're not quite working with AIs in everywhere yet, so we've still got a chance to work with humans. Amazing. Oh, and another one, they're all coming in now. So do you think convenience outweighs trust in consumers, given the strength of businesses like Amazon? That's a really good question.
So do you think convenience outweighs trust in consumers? Yeah, so it's funny, actually. I was reading an article on this yesterday, and sometimes it does, but a lot of people are actually starting to become a bit more kind of conscious and aware of where they shop as well. So I think, people will go to a different, if you've got the same product in a different store, they will go to a different store if it's more convenient or the delivery is cheaper. But that doesn't mean they will definitely go there. Like, if you can nurture them, if you really understand them, people are loyal. People want to feel like that they belong to something as well. So if you have taken the time to understand them, then they are more likely to stay loyal, even if they can get it quicker and cheaper elsewhere. Amazon, I think, is a little bit of an exception to the rule, because there's always times where we're like, oh no, I need this tomorrow. And I don't, I'd rather buy from my preferred store, but I know Amazon's going to get it here tonight. So I think that's a little bit of an anomaly there.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're talking to a brand at the moment around this, and it's a real tricky one. Like, they've ended up, their product is cheaper on Amazon, it's cheaper with Holland and Barrett and people like that, and they can't compete with the price that they're selling it at, and it's really tricky. But then it's also, what's the value add? Why would they buy from you directly? What else do they get? Are there extra hints and tips that come with the emails? What else can you sell in? And building, like, what's going to be important to them to use the product. So I suppose it also comes down to product, doesn't it, Kiran? Like, if you need I don't know, what's the last thing I bought on Amazon was like an extension lead. I just need an extension lead that works. I don't really care about brand or where, but like, Amazon makes sense for that. But actually, thinking to this client that I've got in my mind at the moment, they're in kind of the supplements industry, and actually, well, hold on a minute, I'm thinking about putting something medical into my body, taking a tablet, therefore I care a lot more about that, and I'm a bit more cautious, and therefore buying it from Amazon, although it might be the same brand, I like the thought of being more affiliated with the brand and getting their educational content. So yeah, interesting. Oh, we've got another question. This is brilliant. You've all warmed up. In terms of empathy when it comes to social content, are there any studies you're aware of detailing how this is best reached to the consumer?
Oh, good question. Off the top of my head, I can't think of studies, but I would love to go away and find out for you, Ella. But again, like, I've done a talk on the social content as well. So this is where nudges come in quite nicely into social content, and, communicating to your audience in terms of what they want, and also on different platforms as well. So the same person will respond differently across different social media platforms, and will be looking for a different thing across different social media platforms. So, for example, LinkedIn. People want informational content. They don't really want the emotional content, and they will share the informational content. Whereas on Facebook, for example, it's the more emotional content that gets shared the most and viewed the most as well. But yeah, I'm gonna go and dig into that. Thank you.
Kiran, playing into that, do you think we change our mindset a bit, like time of the day? So say it's Instagram both times round, but I look at it when I'm at work in between a meeting and I'm in a rush and my head's more in work, and I look at it at 8 o'clock at night when I've got all the time in the world and I'm dual screening watching TV or whatever. Am I likely to respond differently?
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Like, there's obviously those key times to post on social media, but I really do believe that changes depending on your audience. So, speaking from my personal experience, I'm a parent. So about 7 p.m, 7:30 is a great time to target me on Insta, because I am trying to put the kids to bed, telling them to shush, patting them while scrolling on my phone in the dark, because, I know I'm going to be in there for the long haul. So my phone is my company. Whereas other people at 7 p.m. who don't have young children and aren't doing that will be eating their dinner, and that's a really rubbish time to target them. So yeah, I think definitely has an impact.
So interesting. So following that point with LinkedIn, would you say empathy marketing is hard to convey with B2B?
No, because even with B2B, you're talking to people. So I think often when we say the words empathy or emotion, we think extremes. We think, like love and sadness and terror or something, but actually just speaking to someone through human terms rather than just talking about the key points of your product or your brand. So, in B2B, you're still talking to humans. It might be, the scales might be tipped slightly more the other way, but definitely still has a role.
I always use a good example on that one. So years ago, we worked with a business that was like an accountancy software business, so quite a dry product. Sorry for any accountants or software people out there, but it was a bit dry. They said the same. But their main target audience was like the practice manager. That was the person that would be the gateway to getting into a practice, and they would be a massive influencer on which software was chosen, and they'd be part of the whole journey to bring the software on board. And today, at that point, all of their marketing have just been focused feature benefits, as you always see with software. Our software does this, which helps you do that, which was just very obvious, and the same as all their competitors were doing. But actually what we found from understanding the audience more was that for the practice manager, this was a career defining moment, picking the right software, making it make a difference to how the whole company worked, to make things more efficient, to put their name on the map of the firm, to make sure the whole board knew who they were, because this was, if they got it right, was going to make such a difference. So actually the motivation for them picking the software was so very different to how all of the companies in the industry were talking to them, because they were just going, here's a feature and a benefit. So yeah, there's so much around empathy. And when you really start to understand why someone in a company is in charge of making a certain decision, or what that decision means and can do for them, that then you can start to layer into the marketing. So yeah, there's definitely a big B2B world there. Any other questions? No, amazing. Well, as I said, well, firstly, thank you so much to Kiran. She's done a ton of work to present for us today, and with a cold, and your cold lasted as well.
Yeah,
that happens sometimes. It's been bad all week, and then for an hour it's all good. We've got some lovely feedback coming in here, so thank you everyone for being here. I hope you've all enjoyed your brunch boxes, and if you haven't already, please do fill out the survey form, because it's really important to us and really helps us, and it makes us very happy to be able to know what we should be doing next, because we love putting on these events. And Chantel will be sending out later today follow-ups, so you will have copies of slides you'll be able to get to, you'll be able to get to the recording, so if you want to watch it back or share it with anyone else, you're very welcome to, as well as the feedback form will be on there as well in case you missed it. So thank you all so much for joining.